So I guess we can start. I don't know, don't really have any Easter talk for you. I don't know, do you want an Easter talk? I was going to talk about actually a fairly profound subject of the Dhamma, talking about impermanence. And I think maybe that suits Easter quite well. Easter is kind of a time of impermanence as well. In Christianity. Not that I know much about Christianity, but kind of a vague memory about about things being impermanent there too. And this is one of those very fundamental ideas in Buddhism, known as Anicca in the Pali language. And it's really profound, and very often it is like at the very foundation of how we think about the Buddhist teachings. So Anicca, the idea of impermanence, is something that you can use from the very beginning to kind of give you a boost of understanding, a boost in your meditation. And it's something that goes all the way to the very end of the path. You take it with you all the way, and you kind of get a deeper and deeper and deeper appreciation of what this actually means. And sometimes the word impermanence may not be the ideal translation of anicca. I don't know, when I think about impermanence, it leaves me a little bit cold. Impermanence, yeah, sure, things come and go, things are changeable. It is much more profound than that, and I often think about ideas such as things being unreliable. Unreliability to me is much more an emotionally charged word than impermanence, because unreliable, this is something that, of course, we don't want things to be unreliable, because we like to rely on things. So unreliable goes against kind of some of the really foundational desires that we have as human beings. So unreliability, I think, is a nice way of thinking about impermanence. There's nothing that you can hold on to. Nowhere you can really stand and just relax. Once you start to relax, unreliability comes and start to shake things up. So this is kind of why this is very often so problematic. So this is the idea of anicca, something which is not always there, something which comes and goes, something which not only is impermanent and unreliable, but something which fades away and eventually it ceases completely. It doesn't exist after a while. It comes into existence and it disappears without a trace. This is the idea of unreliability and impermanence, kind of when looked, seen fully for what it actually is. And it is a very important teaching, and one of the ways to gauge the importance of certain teachings in Buddhism is to see where the Buddha talked about these things. And the very last teaching of the Buddha. Do you know the very last teaching of the Buddha? Anyone knows it? No, you don't. You don't know it. Okay, thank you for being straightforward about that. That's good. I know some of you know the very last teaching of the Buddha. But you can imagine the very last teaching. This is found in one of the suttas. Sutta is one of the discourses of the Buddha, if you like. And this is called the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. It is the discourse that talks about the very last days of the Buddha's life. And the Buddha is kind of traveling through India on this. He knows that this is his last journey. He knows that he's going to die fairly soon. I think sometimes you know that when you get very old, especially if you are a Buddha. It helps to have a really clear mind, obviously. And so he's on this journey, and because he knows he's coming to the end of his life, some of the most powerful teachings of the Buddha, some of the ways to kind of let the community know how we're supposed to live after the Buddha passes away, this is all the stuff that comes out in this particular discourse. So because of that, it is very significant, for the future of Buddhism, for how to survive without the Buddha, and all of these kind of things. So you can imagine the last word of the Buddha is going to be extraordinarily significant. That kind of sets the tone for everything that is taught. It's like a summary of a lifetime of teaching. The Buddha is said to have taught for 45 years. He lived till he was 80, and he basically taught till the last moment of his life, the last breath of his life. That was kind of what the Buddha was like. Why? Shouldn't you be allowed to die peacefully? How can you teach till the very last breath? Well, that's what was the Buddha was. That's what his life was about. His life was about teaching. That's what kind of the idea of awakening is. Awakening is an understanding of the nature of the human, what it is to be a human being, and then teaching others, because you understand, then you can also have the solution for everyone else around you. And for the Buddha, there was no other purpose to life apart from this. And because that was the only purpose, he would then teach to his very last breath. There was even, there's a nice story about this wanderer. Buddha was, India was famous for all the wanderers, all these people wandering around, having various kind of teachings, following various kind of people, and having some ideas about what the holy life or the spiritual life was about. Because kind of very interesting time, ancient India, with all this variety of ideas and philosophies and religions, and then meeting for debates, and they would come to the Buddha, and there was, I'm going to overthrow your doctrine, Buddha. What do you say? Buddha said, okay, let's have a discussion about this. And this was kind of ancient India, very interesting time to be alive. We think that today we have like a multiplicity of religions and a variety of choices, but in those days it was probably even more than it is now. Sometimes we underestimate these ancient societies. Anyway, so this fellow called Subhadra, he comes to the Buddha and he says, he wants to approach the Buddha, but then he stopped. Venerable Ananda, who's the Buddha's attendant, says, stop. The Buddha is dying. You want to ask a question? Leave him alone. Leave him at peace. He wants to chillax. It's the wrong time to ask the Buddha a profound question. And I guess the wonder thinks, oh yeah, maybe you have a point. But then the Buddha overhears this conversation. The Buddha says, no, Ananda, don't block people who have a serious and a sincere desire to understand the teaching of the Buddha. Don't block them from approaching. I can tell that Subhadra is an honest person. He really is seeking for the truth. He hasn't come just to trouble me and to have an argument with me. He actually wants to listen to these teachings. And then Subhadra comes, and he allows Subhadra. This is on his deathbed, right? This is how the Buddha works. And then he teaches Subhadra, and it's actually the teaching that he tells Subhadra is very beautiful. Do you know the teaching he taught Subhadra? You don't? Okay. It's a nice teaching, actually. It's a very interesting teaching. It's kind of one of those teachings that are really special in Buddhism. And am I going to tell you tonight? If I tell you everything, there's no reason to come back, right? So this will be a secret. So next time we come, okay, I'll tell you about Subhadra, what the Buddha taught Subhadra. So let's now stay on the idea of impermanence. This is how you get more kind of people coming here. So this is kind of the trick, So then the Buddha kind of teaches Subhadra, and then time kind of goes on, and all the people around it, they come to pay their respect to the Buddha, say the final goodbye, and then the Buddha knows that he is just about to pass away. And at this point, when he's just passed away, he says to the monks, first of all he asked, is there any last question that anyone has? And then, of course, the monks say, no, we don't have any last questions. We understand the teaching of the Buddha. And then come the last words of the Buddha. Probably the summary of his entire teaching career come in these last words. How many words do you think he needs to summarize entire teaching? Can you imagine how many words? 100? 8? 8 words, says, have you here down there? 8 words, okay. 8 words, 100, 1,000. 4 words, is really the summary of his teachings. And these words are as follows. Are you ready? Okay. Vaya Dhamma Sankara Apamadena Sampadeta. Now you know. So this is the Pali language, right? I'm going to translate for you, I promise. I'm going to translate even into English to make it even more easy for you. So this is the Pali language. It's actually probably very similar to what the Buddha said. Vaya Dhamma Sankara. All phenomena have the nature to come to an end. All phenomena have the nature to come to an end. Apamadena sampadeta. Strive on with heedfulness or with carefulness. Practice carefully because of that. Those are the last words of the Buddha. And what you will notice that there's 2 things, one thing after the other. The first one is all things have an end. All things kind of are subject to cessation, if you like, or to impermanence. And that is like the right view. That is the way to think about the world, right? This is how we should see everything. And the consequence of seeing things in the right way, according to the way the Buddha has seen the world, is that you strive on, you put an effort with diligence, with heedfulness, with carefulness. Because if you understand the problem properly, that actually leads you automatically to practicing this path. And that gives you an idea of the profundity of this teaching. Yeah? If you understand the idea of impermanence, the problem of nothing really being reliable in this world, the fact that everything comes to an end, that's powerful, right? Everything comes to an end. There is nothing solid. There is nowhere to stand. There's nothing to hold on to. The consequences of understanding that is that you start practicing. You start taking the spiritual path seriously. You don't hold on to all the phenomena in the world that are never going to be reliable. That is kind of the consequence of this. So this is why it is such a profound and such a beautiful teaching. And it needs to be contemplated. These are the last words of the Buddha. So don't forget that. Are you going to forget it? No? Okay, okay, excellent. Thank you for saying that. But I'll test you later on. Let's see. So this is the idea of the Buddha. This is the insight of the Buddha and the consequences of that insight. And one of the kind of extraordinary things, it's a very simple idea, right? That all things are impermanent, everything has an end, everything must cease. It's a very simple idea. But it is also very profound, and sometimes we underestimate or we overestimate our ability to understand these simple things. If you ask an ordinary person about impermanence, they will say, yeah, I get it, things are changeable, of course, everyone knows that. No, you don't know that. That's the whole point. You know it maybe in a superficial way, but you don't really appreciate what is going on. And there was an experiment that was done a while ago, some kind of research. Now we're coming into modern times. We're leaping 2,500 years forward from the time of the passing away of the Buddha to the modern day. And I may have said this here before, but it's a really nice kind of piece of research that was done about human beings and their ability to see impermanence, to see the future, what the future is going to be like. And what they did, they asked this group of people, I don't know how many, I hope, but it was a significant sample. Isn't that right? How long it has to be a significant sample, otherwise it doesn't work, right? So research has to be done properly. So I'm not sure how well it was conducted, but hopefully it was a significant, statistically significant sample otherwise it doesn't work. And so they asked them, well, if you think back on yourself today compared to what you were like 10 years ago, what happened? Can you see the change? Can you see that how you're changed? And everyone said, yeah, I can see the change. 10 years ago, I was a really dodgy character. Now I've really got my act together. I understood the Buddha's teachings, started practicing well. I became having a good heart, treating other people well, speaking the kind words. Now I can see the change. Or maybe someone otherwise who started out really nicely and they became dodgy after a while. That also happens, right? So usually when we look back in time, we can see the evolution and the change in our character, either for the better or for the worse, or maybe for stability for most people. And so they could tell, this change. They say, I'm a different person now from what I was 10 years ago. And then they asked the same people to try to look into the future. What are you going to be like 10 years from now? And they were saying, there may be a little bit of changes. Maybe I become a little bit more kind. Maybe I become a bit more wealthy because I work really hard. Maybe, things will happen. But essentially, I will be the same person. Essentially, there won't be any real difference. And so what this research pointed to is that when we look into the past, we are able to see change. Why? Because it's bleeding obvious. We can see things happening. It actually has changed. So you can't really avoid seeing change when you look into the past because it has happened. But when we try to look into the future, we are incapable of seeing change in the same way. We are stuck with the present. We think the present will continue somehow. The way it is now is also the way it will be into the future. And that tells you right there the significance of contemplating the idea of impermanence and change. The significance of contemplating the idea of nothing really being solid, nothing being reliable. It is significant because we don't really understand it. We don't get it. Our sense of self, our sense of solidity in the world tricks us into thinking the future basically is a continuation of the present. But of course, that is wrong view. It's the wrong way of thinking about things. And it's rooted, large part, this is again kind of a very profound part of the Buddhist teachings, it is rooted in the sense of self. The sense of self doesn't allow you to see change, because the sense of self forces you to see things as permanent in one way or another. It's a continuation of who you are, and that is the reason why we can't see these things. This is why contemplating impermanence is such a powerful thing to do. And so that gives you a little bit kind of the overview of why this really matters. Why this is really important. And in many ways, as we have seen from the Buddha's last words, etc., in many ways this is perhaps the foundational contemplation in Buddhism. Apart from meditation practice where you watch your breath or whatever, this is a kind of contemplation that enhances the meditation practice. The more you see this impermanence, what is the consequences of seeing impermanence? Why does this matter? Why should we do this? And the answer is because it allows you to let go. You can. If you see things are impermanent, you understand actually there's nothing really worth holding on to in this. Because when you see things are impermanent, you understand they are problematic. You understand they will lead to suffering down the track. Why? Because if you hold on to things that are impermanent, it's going to be painful when it gets taken from you. And this is basically the nature of reality. And so seeing impermanence, you don't even have to be told, you know straight away that this is an aspect of suffering. This is one of the problems in the world. And because you know it is one of the problems in the world, you start to let go. You start to have what is called in Buddhism the nekkhamma sankappa. Nekkhamma is like renunciation. You let go a little bit. You take a step back. You allow things to be more. You don't get so involved in the world, in all of these problems, all of these things in the world, because you know involvement is going to lead to suffering in the future. So seeing impermanence, which seems so easy and simple, as you develop that perception, you start to understand the problems in the world. When you understand the problems in the world, that leads you also to seeing a little bit into this idea we call non-self in Buddhism. And all of this together helps you to let go. And then that feeds back into the meditation. It gives rise to more joy and happiness as a consequence. Kind of weird thing. It sounds like contemplating impermanence is going to be terrible, right? Seeing everything as coming and going, nothing being reliable, it sounds awful. Actually leads to happiness. This is it's an extraordinary thing on this path. So this is kind of how these things develop together. I should say, always as a matter of care and a matter of kind of being careful with these things, if things are too painful to observe or contemplate, if you find that thinking about impermanence is very difficult and it leaves you sad and depressed or whatever, please don't contemplate it. The Buddhist path is not a path where we want to encourage sadness and depression. We want to allow people to come out of sadness and depression. So always develop positive qualities and these more deeper insights, develop them together so you have some kind of basis upon which you can stand to actually contemplate these deeper things. If I see you looking too depressed in the audience, then I will kind of encourage you to do something else. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck in in something terrible. Please come afterwards and complain about me if it is too depressive, so I can change the tack. But the idea is to help you, to come out of this. The Buddha has some very beautiful similes to describe the importance of this perception of impermanence. It's a perception. Part of this is like the developing of right view, seeing the world in the right way. The Buddha says that as you develop this idea of impermanence or unreliability in the world, you cut off all the roots of suffering. And when you cut off all the roots of suffering, suffering can no longer arise. It's like cutting off the roots of a plant. This is kind of the end point of this contemplation of impermanence. Cutting off all those foundational problems or defilements that drive the suffering in the world and drive the suffering in your own life. The Buddha says that in the same way as jasmine, the scent of jasmine is the most beautiful or considered the highest scent of flowers. You know what jasmine smells like? Yeah, jasmine is very strong, powerful, beautiful smell. You walk through a kind of a bush of jasmine flowers, it's like, wow, this is great. Okay, I'll hang around here for a while. It's a kind of very strong and beautiful smell when you we have a few of those in the monastery. That's why I know. Otherwise, I would never have known. But now I know. I'm no flower expert. And in the same way as jasmine is the best smell of flowers, in the same way, the perception of impermanence is like the peak, the highest kind of perception that we can develop. It takes everything else with it. Everything else kind of is derived from that in a certain way. In the same way as the rafters of a house meet in the peak, they meet in the top. In the same way, this is the topmost kind of perception that we can develop, and it brings everything else along with it. This is some of the ways this is described in the suttas. So this is the idea of developing the perception of impermanence and unreliability. How can we do this in practice? And it's incredibly simple to do in practice, at least as we start out. And I've talked about this in many ways here before, but I am going to repeat myself probably a lot tonight. I love to repeat myself. And so please forgive me for that, but this is kind of par for the course. But the very simple idea of contemplating impermanence is just to see what is happening in the world around you. Especially to see the world kind of at large, seeing the ideas, what you see, the news on television, seeing the problems with wars in the world, seeing the problems with the refugee crisis in the world, seeing the economic problems. I just came back from Sri Lanka. I had 10 days in Sri Lanka, just came back a few days ago. It was a wonderful trip, by the way. Beautiful. It's a beautiful island. It was so green. This is tropical. Beautiful. Everyone is a Buddhist. You feel like you belong in Sri Lanka. You look like this. Everyone sort of understands who you are. In Australia, it's a bit more dodgy. You never know whether someone's going to take you as the real deal or they're going to think you are a Hare Krishna or whatever. It's kind of Australia, very uncertain. Sri Lanka, you fit right in. It's kind of nice. And actually, I love to be a monk in Australia. It's great, but it's a different feel when you go to a Buddhist country. It's a very beautiful place, and I really enjoyed it. But they too have been through some very difficult times in recent years. A very big economic crisis in Sri Lanka. And you start looking around the world and you see all of this instability. They say that the modern generation, the new generation, are kind of getting more sad and depressed because the world seems to be going wrong or whatever. And they may have a point. And they blame maybe the older generation, people like me, and they say, "What have you done? You're destroying the world." So I'm trying to set this right now by giving this Dhamma talk. So remember that this is the contemplation of impermanence in the world at large. This will eventually lead you to joy and happiness, because you understand something profound. As you understand something profound about the reality of the world, you start to let go of that. You start to look for a happiness where happiness really can be found. The reason why you get upset when you see all of these terrible things, when you read the news or you watch the news on TV or whatever it is you get your news, don't get your news from these kind of news feeds because it's crap news. Get your news from real places. But when you get your news from the world, when you see what's happening in the world, it actually leads to a turning away. It leads to turning to something more profound, something real, the spiritual practice where something actually can be found, real happiness, real joy, real meaning, real purpose, a real goal, something that actually matters in life. This is the beauty of contemplating things in the right way. It makes you a better person. Is anyone here who doesn't want to be a better person? If you don't want to be a better person, you might be in the wrong place. Everyone who comes here wants to be a better person, right? And you are already good, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So congratulations. So this is the idea of the beginning of contemplating impermanence. And you know that you haven't contemplated it enough. If you turn on the TV or you see the news and you think, oh no, another war, oh no, more people died, oh no, another tsunami, oh no, more refugees, oh no, oh no, oh no. If you think, oh no, it means you haven't really understood impermanence. If you say, oh yeah, I expect another war. Don't say it like that, that's kind of a bit too aloof and cold maybe. But yeah, if you expect the unexpected, as I like to see, say, expect the unexpected. You don't know there's going to be another war, but you know unexpected things are going to happen. If you expect the unexpected, then you are wise. And when you turn on the TV and you see weird things, bad things, climate change, whatever happening, you know, of course, this is par for the course. This is the nature of the world. I expected that. I'm already turning away from that world because I know it is inherently unreliable. That is how you know whether you are attached or not, what your reaction is when you see those news. So this is like the beginning, This is the starting point of understanding impermanence in the world. And this is already very, very powerful. If you can do this much already, you're kind of very much on the right track. And you can see this also in many of the institutions in our society. Australia is, I would say, a good place to live. I don't really know that much about Australia. It's kind of embarrassing. I lived here for 30 years. I lived half my life in this country, but I've been tucked away in this monastery here, down in Serpentine. I don't know anything about it. Okay, I come here and then I go to the airport. I was just joking today. The place I visited most in Australia, number 1 is Bodhinyana Monastery. Number 2 is Dhammaloka Buddha Center. Number 3 is Perth Airport. That's kind of where I hang out the most. Perth Airport is a distant third, but still, you know what it's like. This kind of the monk's life for you in a nutshell. But it's kind of it's a good society in general. I mean, lots of improvements can be done, of course, but it's not bad when you kind of compare it to most societies in the world and that sort of thing. But how stable are our institutions? How stable is our healthcare system? How stable is, you look at the divide between the rich and the poor in Australia. It has been growing enormously over the last 50 years. And generally speaking, if you ask a psychologist or people who understand human happiness, they said that's bad for human happiness. The more division you have in this way, you create kind of an A class and a B class. You create people who don't really understand each other anymore. You get people who go to elite schools and people who go to ordinary schools, and it creates divisions in our society. And divisions are always bad. It leads to conflict. It leads to misunderstandings. It leads to all of these kind of things. So how stable are our institutions? And you will see that over time things change. Sometimes they change dramatically. Now we're getting closer to home. Now we're coming right here to Perth, where we rely on the institutions. We're very lucky to live in Perth or Western Australia. It's a very wealthy part of the world. So the services we get are usually pretty good, but it won't last, It's kind of uncertain. It's unreliable. It's already shaking. We don't know how long these things are going to be stable for. And then you start to understand the nature of impermanence. One of the ways that I like to think about impermanence is that impermanence is really about all kind of causes and conditions building up out of sight. It is like things happening, you can't really see them happening. They're kind of happening behind the scenes sometimes. And the way to think about it is a bit like how earthquakes work. How does an earthquake work? An earthquake is like these tectonic plates, plate tectonics, about these kind of giant parts of the crust of the earth moving in comparison to each other. And then as they move a little bit, there is this tensions building up underground. Tension building up, building up, building up. Causes and conditions happening out of sight. You don't really know what's happening until one day the cause and conditions are so strong. It leads to an earthquake or it leads to a volcano. Bang, it happens. I don't know if you've seen those pictures from Iceland. Have you seen those pictures from Iceland? They're pretty cool, but pretty scary at the same time, right? It's kind of an interesting combination. And this is how our world works. Things building up out of sight, cause and conditions. Suddenly, comes through. It comes through in a war in Ukraine, a war in the Middle East, climate change, whatever, suddenly out of control. Yeah, bang, impermanence, unreliability, uncertainty happens. This is why we should always expect the unexpected. This is kind of how the world works. So the world at large, our society right here in Perth is far more uncertain than we think it is. Don't rely on nothing. Actually rely on nothing. That's the one thing you can rely on, right? But don't rely on anything. Nothing is okay, anything is not okay. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay, good, I'm glad. So you have understood the kind of the Buddhist, not finished yet, Eddie, so hold on your applause. So, but then we come even closer to home. Impermanence has to do with our kind of very, who we are as human beings, our family, our own bodies, our job, all of these kind of things. Life and death, illnesses, old age, all of these kind of things. That is the impermanence that comes very, very close to us. As the Buddha says in the suttas, everything that is dear and beloved to us will become otherwise, will become separated from us. It's a very powerful idea of impermanence. Everything dear and beloved to me will become otherwise, will become separated from me. It's kind of hard to bear even thinking that thought. But if we don't think it, if we don't deal with it now, we're going to have to deal with it far more when eventually it happens. If we deal with it now, if we try to understand what it means, maybe we can get onto the spiritual path, think about these things in a new way, and encourage ourselves to actually practice, do something that counteracts these kind of big problems in life. But we know everything in our life, is impermanent in this way. The Buddha starts off talking about rebirth, old age, sickness, death. These are all of these things that matter so enormously. And all of these things are aspects of the idea of impermanence. You can now see why the idea of anicca is so profound, because it brings in all of these other contemplations that we have on the Buddhist path. Death contemplation is one of the most important things that we have in Buddhism. The Buddha teaches this a lot. Please do death contemplation. Please remind yourself on a regular basis that you're going to die. Wake up in the morning, the first thing you should think is, I'm going to die. That's a good start of the day, right? That is the best start of the day. I'm not really joking even. A lot of people I know that do death contemplation the first thing in the morning. And if you do it in the right way, it sets the stage for the day, what matters during that day. Okay, I could die today. What does that mean? It means I'm going to treat people well. I'm going to be kind to others. I'm going to be kind to myself. I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to say goodbye to my family in the morning. I'm going to say goodbye in a good way, not after an argument. Because if I'm going to die, I don't want to die after an argument. That's crazy. If you are on your deathbed, are you going to argue with people around you? Imagine being on deathbed and I actually haven't had that argument yet. Okay, better, let's have this argument before I die. Quickly, I'm going to die soon. Let's have this. That's the last thing, right? If you're about to die, you can say, okay, leave it, let it be. I'm out of it. I don't want to argue with anyone. And so the idea of contemplating death makes us better people. Impermanence makes you a better person. Why? Because you remember what really matters. You get your priorities right. This is what this really is about. Understanding impermanence in the world as a whole, then on the kind of intermediate scale in our city of Perth, then on your personal scale in the family, with yourself, with your own body, that you too are going to die and get sick before you know it. These things are just so uncertain. And all of these things, if you do them in the right way, they have a very powerful consequence. The consequence of turning away from what I would call the world of the five senses. All the things I have explained are really about the world of the five senses. And instead turning on to the spiritual life, turning towards that, because that is where you find the respite, the safety, the refuge from all the problems in the world. Let me come back a little bit. I spoke before about the Buddha's final days, So again, very beautiful teaching that you find in the suttas called the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. It means the greater discourse on the passing away of the Buddha. That's what it means. And it's very beautiful. And I really recommend you to study that sutta if you're interested in the Buddha's teachings. We did a series of talks here. Actually, I did a series of talks right here at the Dhammaloka Center on this particular sutta. Yeah, it only goes on for about 20 hours or so, because it's such a long sutta and such a beautiful thing, so it goes on for a long time. But if you're interested, you can listen to that. But that means you have to be really committed, because 20 hours, I recognize, is quite a bit of investment for most people. But anyway, in this sutta, where the Buddha is about to pass away, as he gets close to his passing away, he also has some very severe illnesses. And as he has these very severe illnesses, Venerable Ananda, who is his attendant, he recognized that the Buddha is coming to the end of his lifetime. Now, Venerable Ananda has been with the Buddha for, well, actually, they are family, so they go back to even before they became monks, right? But he has been his personal attendant for 20 years. 20 years, and has always been with the Buddha, listening to everything the Buddha has to say, because he is the one who memorized the teachings of the Buddha, always being there to support the Buddha, always being there if the Buddha needs, needs something or whatever. Ananda is always there. And you can imagine if you are with somebody all the time, someone who has the qualities of the Buddha, endless kindness, endless compassion, endless wisdom, always has a word to say about whatever the situation might be. Imagine having had that person in your life for your whole life. Difficult to get a husband or wife like that, right? I best not to look for a husband or wife quite like that, because you might as well become a monk straight away or a nun straight away, because that's really the only way to find that. But anyway, just kind of a bit of PR for the monastic life. Anyway, so Ananda, you can imagine how distraught he is. The Buddha is about to pass away. He recognizes this. And then he goes to the Buddha and he says to the Buddha, "Oh, I'm seeing, Venerable Sir, that you are sick. And because I see your sickness, the directions are unclear to me. I can't remember the teachings or anything like that. Your mind is completely all over the place. You're feeling deluded, basically. And I'm sure many of you will know what that means. If you're full of grief and sadness, your mind you lose the plot a little bit. Is there anyone here who has never lost the plot a little bit? Everyone has lost the plot sometimes, right? This is just kind of part of what it means to be human. And so he loses the plot a little bit. And then the Buddha says to him, and this is kind of what is interesting. It comes a little bit later in the same sutta, but the Buddha says to him, "Haven't I told you, Ananda, that everything that is dear and pleasing to you must become otherwise, must become separated from you?" Ananda, if you want a refuge in the world, you should take yourself as a refuge. You should take the Dhamma as refuge. You should be Attadipa, Dhammadipa. Just teaching a bit of Pali on the way here. Attadipa, Dhammadipa, yourself as a refuge, the Dhamma as a refuge. Why? Because if you take refuge in the world outside, you will always be disappointed. Even the Buddha has to pass away. So what does it mean to take yourself as a refuge? What does it mean to take the Dhamma? The Dhamma is the teaching of the Buddha. What does it mean to take that as a refuge? And then he explains what it means to take that as a refuge is to meditate. When you meditate properly, this is called satipatthana in the Pali language. When you do the proper meditation, you go within. And when you go within, when you let go of that world of the five senses that is so unreliable and so uncertain, when you let go of that, that is where you find that stability inside. You find the joy inside. You find the peace inside. You find meaning inside. You start to realize how devoid of meaning the world of the five senses is. You start to understand how hollow it is. There is nothing to hold on to. It is just kind of this turmoil all the time going on. There's nowhere doesn't lead anywhere. And so it is fundamentally problematic. But when you start to feel the peace inside, when you start to feel the joy and happiness that comes from letting go of those things, and that's precisely why we have to contemplate them a little bit, so we can let go of them. As you do that, the peace and happiness and joy start to build up within. That becomes the refuge. Why? Because it is worthy of being called a refuge. Away from the world, meaning and all of these positive qualities being built up inside. That should be your refuge. And if you understand what I mean, and some of you will understand, because some of you have been meditators for a long time, you have an idea what these things are like, and because of that, you have some idea what that refuge actually means. And it is so delightful, it is such a beautiful thing, and you start to understand why giving up the world is actually the only sensible thing to do. Giving it up in the sense of not being attached to it, not giving it up in the sense of not caring. You should always care, but you should be less attached. That is the right attitude. And then, when you then come onto the path of meditation, which this really is about, you're starting to find the refuge from the world outside, giving up the five senses a little bit, loosening the grip on that world so you can be more at ease and more relaxed. The meditation starts to deepen. And as the meditation starts to deepen, you start to understand the idea of impermanence and unreliability in an even more profound way. We only scratched the surface so far, Even now, you're starting to meditate, you're starting to kind of find joy and peace. From a Buddhist point of view, from the point of view of what the Buddha taught, still only scratching the surface. Isn't that kind of cool? Because if joy and peace is scratching the surface, wow, what on earth could be further down the track? And this is kind of the nice thing about this Buddhist path. It is just more joy, more happiness, more peace, building up till you come to the very end of this path. And so as you practice in this way, and as you start to meditate more, you start to understand the idea of impermanence and unreliability in an even more profound way. You start to experience it in your own mind, what it means. To give you an idea, a very obvious idea, the first time you become really peaceful in meditation, you realize thinking has gone. Thinking has gone. Maybe some of you didn't realize that was possible. I often hear about people say, I think all the time. All the time I think. And I think, whoa, I feel sorry for you. Too much thinking is dukkha. Suffering is a problem. We know if the mind starts to kind of go too fast, it's terrible. It feels very restless. It feels very, very, very bad. Then one day in meditation, no thinking, just peace and clarity. Nothing else going on. Wow, now I start to understand thinking can disappear. Then you understand the impermanence of thinking. You are not the thinking when the thinking is gone. You are more present. You are more alive. You feel better about yourself precisely because the thinking is gone. One of the main reasons why we value the thinking so much is because it feels like the thinking is coming from you. These are my thoughts. Have you noticed that in meditation, when you sit down and close and feel the thinking, and it feels like they are your thoughts, until one day the thinking is gone and you are more happy and you realize actually you weren't those thoughts at all. Getting rid of the thinking is blimmin' marvelous. Get rid of those stupid thoughts. Rid of them. Yay, no more thinking. And actually you feel all the better for it. And so the insight that arises from that is that, first of all, part of the mind is impermanent. And because that impermanence leads to more happiness and joy, you understand the suffering of the thinking mind. And also you understand because the thinking mind is gone and you are still there and you are better off as a consequence, that thinking is non-self. It has got nothing to do with you. You are not really your thoughts. You are something far more profound than the thinking mind. You are like the peaceful awareness. I'm not saying you are this, but this is what it feels like at that time. You are some kind of peaceful awareness, full of joy and happiness. That is much better to attach a little bit to that than to attach to the thinking mind. And in this way, meditation, as the meditation becomes more and more peaceful, more and more joyful, more and more happy, as you abandon more and more things in the world, you start to see the impermanence of the mind itself, giving things up. And the more things you give up in the mind, the less that actually remains, the better you feel, the more happiness you have. One of the strange things in the world, giving up, renouncing, letting go, is the best thing that ever happened to you in your life. That is the weird thing about the Buddhist path. And this is what you see in this process of impermanence as you go through this. So this is the Buddhist idea of impermanence. And you carry on observing this, you carry on observing this unreliability, you carry on the idea of ending and cessation, deeper and deeper and deeper, to see how deeply it is possible to go. This is the idea. And the deeper you go, the more powerful this becomes as you go along, and the more insight you get, and the more understanding you get of the meaning of life. So let me finish off by giving you some similes that the Buddha had about the idea of impermanence of a human being. Just to give you some idea how the Buddha explained this, and it gives you an idea of how to think about these things. And the Buddha gave the simile of the impermanence of the body. What is the body? And the Buddha said the physical body, he said, is like a lump of foam on the river Ganges. If you go to a large river, I don't know about the Swan River, but maybe the Swan River has too, you can sometimes see little lumps of foam coming down. And the Buddha says, that is your body. And then he asks, well, what is the substance in a bit of foam? Obviously no substance, right? In the same way as a lump of foam, the body is the same. A lump of foam is always changing. A lump of foam is that there are bubbles arising, bubbles disappearing, and eventually one day the whole bunch of foam will be completely gone, changing, shape-shifting over time, and eventually completely gone. That is the physical body. And you know the physical body is like that. We are changing. We kind of start off when we are small, and then we grow up, become big, sometimes become a little bit too big, and then you have all these kind of things, and then you get old and you get wrinkly, and then you get really kind of nothing works anymore after a while, shaping, and then bang, you're out of here. The bubbles are completely gone. This is the body for you. It's a beautiful metaphor for the body, or similarly for the body, the lump of foam on the river Ganges. Okay, lump of foam. Are you all right? It's hard to see, isn't it, sometimes? But that's kind of the reality. Then the simile for feelings. These are the similes for the 5 kind of groups of personality that we have as human beings. The simile for feelings is like a bubble. Bubbles that come and go on the river Ganges or on the river Swan or wherever it might be. A bubble forms, and as soon as the bubble forms, before you know it, it is gone again. Another bubble arises, and then that bubble too is gone before you know it. This is the idea of feelings. Feelings are so incredibly uncertain and unreliable. And yet feelings are the most important thing to us in this world. We live to have good feelings. We live to be able to be happy. We live to be able to enjoy the world. Positive feelings and avoiding the negative is really what life is about. This is what everyone in the world wants to do. This is what craving and desire in the world really concerns, the idea of pursuing positive feelings and avoiding the bad ones. And yet, when you look at them, they are so incredibly ephemeral. They last but a fraction of a moment, and another feeling arises. When you are in this room, maybe you look and think, actually, it's quite a nice room, quite attractive, and so you have a good feeling. And then maybe something else happens, I don't know, maybe you hear something you don't like, too much impermanence, you don't like to hear more about impermanence, okay, I don't like that. Then negative feeling, right, arises. One moment a good feeling, the next moment a negative feeling. I hope you don't have too many negative feelings about impermanence, because then I make me feel really bad. What to do? I hope you're okay. And this way, feelings arise. You hear something you don't like. You taste something you like. You smell something you don't like. You touch something painful. Feelings come and go so fast, completely out of control. And this is the reality of feelings in this world. We try to control the uncontrollable. That is the message of the Buddha. Then there is the idea of perception. And the idea of perception in Buddhism is basically, perception means our ability to make sense of the world around us. Perception is something very simple, like you see a person and you think friend or enemy. Yeah, I can see if I can find any enemies in here. No, no enemies, right? Isn't that great? Actually, we shouldn't really have enemies as good Buddhists. If you want to be a good Buddhist, have zero enemies. Don't worry about what other people think about you, but you don't have any enemies. That's what I really recommend. So perception is these kind of things, how we make sense of things. This is a room, these are human beings, this is a microphone, this is a chair, this is a carpet. We make sense of the world. This is a friend, this is the government. These are perceptions, it's labels, it's the way we understand the world. And the Buddha describes perception as a mirage. Yeah, you know a mirage, right? When you drive on the highway in Perth, sometimes it's really hot and it looks like there's water on the bitumen. Have you seen that? Yeah, it's kind of interesting. And of course, there is no water there. You come close, you realize it's just hot air or something like that. There was nothing there. And the way we perceive the world, the way we think about people, enemies or friends, is like a mirage. It can be shifted like that. If I look at someone's bad qualities, now let me think about Conrad for a second. What are the bad qualities in Conrad? No, that's impossible. Let's see. If you look at someone's bad qualities, something negative can happen inside of you. Then you shift your perception, and in a fraction of a second, focusing from the bad to the good qualities, the perception can change just like that. And suddenly, someone is your friend. And that is such a beautiful thing when that happens. You're moving your perceptions around, and they are so utterly unreliable, so utterly uncertain. Everything we think of in the world, we think of things as fixed. We think of things being in a certain way. We have ideas about the world. Those ideas are very far more ephemeral than we think they are. And there's something very interesting about that, something very important about that. First of all, we shouldn't rely on these things. We shouldn't rely on the perceptions we have of the world because we don't really know. We should be far more unsure about ourselves. People in the world are far too sure about themselves, right? I know this is true, this is wrong, this is the reality, you are wrong, I'm right. We should be more humble, and I think the internet makes us particularly stupid when it comes to these kind of things. Please don't be that stupid. And then when you are more humble and more you realize the uncertainty of your own judgments and knowledge of the world, actually it makes you more easygoing as well. You become less prickly. There's less to defend in your life because actually you don't have that certainty about you. Not having so much certainty to me is a sign of wisdom. Someone who's really certain about themselves all the time, I reckon they haven't got that much wisdom. But it also means, and this is kind of the beautiful thing about this, if perception is a very uncertain thing, if it is subject to change all the time, if we can change it precisely because of that, it means that we can change the way we think about people, the world around us. We can have more kindness and care. We can have more metta and love and friendliness to everyone around us. And this is the beauty of this. We don't have to be stuck in anger, in ill will, in negativity, because these things are not solid. They are just an idea built up in our mind which doesn't have any foundation. It can be changed just like that if we know how to do it. And what a marvelous thing that is. Don't buy into this idea that these things are permanent. They are not. They are like a mirage, says the Buddha. That is just about as impermanent as you possibly can get. And this is the beautiful upside of these teachings. It means that you can start shifting your perceptions around. You can start to look at people in a new way. You can build up these beautiful ideas of the world, of the people around you. And as you do that, not only does everything become easier in your life, but you start to feel much, much better about yourself as well as a consequence of that. This is, if you like, the upside of impermanence. Impermanence is seeing the danger in the world, seeing the danger within yourself, understanding that so much of our existence is like a mirage. It can be turned around just like that. One of the ideas of being an arahant, a fully awakened being in Buddhism, is precisely the idea that you can change your perceptions like that. You can see something as ugly and then seeing it as beautiful in the next moment, just as an act of will. So, using the idea of impermanence, not believing that there is a solid person inside, that we are some kind of inherent being, allows us to practice this path. Remember, the future is not set. When you may think that the future is just an extension of the present, no, it isn't. The future is going to be dramatically different from what you think it's going to be. And your job is to make sure that you are going to be a better person through that process into the future. And don't think that there is a limit to how good you can be. You can build up your inner qualities to an extraordinary level to become a person who is extremely kind and caring and has a sense of love and compassion for the whole world. That is possible on this path, and everyone here can do it if you are committed. Don't believe the sense of self inside of you that says, no, you are stuck. You are stuck in depression, you will always be depressed, or you're stuck in sadness, you'll always be sad. That isn't the way the world is. Things can happen. You can change, and it's really up to you to make it happen. But first of all, you have to believe in this path and believe in the idea of impermanence. And then, as you practice in this way, you start to see the miracle of change inside of you. You start to see the miracle of impermanence in a positive light when you do become someone else. And one day you see your life is completely transformed. You are a different person. In one way, you are still the same because you have the same history here. But in another way, you're also much better, and you feel far better about yourself as a consequence. And then you become a real blessing for yourself. And when you become a blessing for yourself, you also become a blessing for the world around you. Okay, enough. Okay, everyone, so that is just a little bit about impermanence. I'm glad no one walked out. I'm always scared people walk out during this kind of talks, but I'm very pleased with that. So that doesn't mean you're not allowed to walk out. You are, but nevertheless. Anyone like to ask any questions or comment on what we talked about today? Yes, please, over there. Yeah, fire away.
Hi, thanks very much for the talk. I've been contemplating impermanence for a while, so I'm just going to kind of maybe riff on some stuff that I've been thinking about and reflecting on in your talk.
All right. Yeah.
So, anicca, I mean, it is the ease and the peace that we experience through meditation, through letting go. Is the anicca, is it seeing that we don't exist from your perspective? Like, is it that you just see that you're nothing so that you're everything? Or is impermanence a principle of harmony? Is there a way that things flow, and if we let go, we fall into the flow of that?
Yeah, I would say both of those things ultimately. But take it slowly. Don't try to go too fast, right? Because if you try to go too fast, you're going to stumble and fall over and hurt yourself. So be careful with that one. But yes, it is a principle of harmony in the sense that a lot of the reasons why we have conflict in the world is because we hold on to things. We hold on to my opinion or my way or whatever. And if we are able to go with the flow instead and kind of move with things, actually it tends to create less problems in the world. It tends to create more harmony. So that's absolutely true. When it comes to the idea of impermanence in meditation practice, it is, I mean, the idea of non-self, on coming to the point where you see that everything is impermanent, that's extremely profound. And, see what happens as you go along. The Buddha says, yes, at the end of the day, there is no self, there is just emptiness. And emptiness is the most beautiful thing, the most happy thing in the world. In the meantime, just use the idea of impermanence to deepen your meditation. Use it as a support, to make meditation, to let go more, because you understand that things in the world are not really reliable or worthy of holding on. Then come inside of yourself. Then start to observe your mind. And as you observe your mind and your body, if you go into a nice meditation, your body starts to disappear. And you think, actually, jeepers, the body is gone, and I feel much better. Obviously, the body is a problem. You start to let go of the body. The mind has far more potential for happiness than the body has. And so in this way, you gradually see impermanence of more and more things, and there's less and less things remaining, until there's only bliss kind of remains. And when only bliss remains, well, what happens after that? That's kind of exciting, right? What is beyond bliss, so to speak? That's kind of where the real kind of deal starts to happen, the real profundity of the Buddhist path, like emptiness and these kind of things.
Sure.
Yeah.
Does the bliss? I mean, is there permanence to the bliss?
Nothing is permanent. Yeah. So you have to go beyond all things.
Is there something that perceives is it just elements moving moving together, and it's just always elements moving that perceives that there isn't something?
Yeah, there's this movement. I mean,
Okay.
there are times when you go into states that can last for long periods of time. You know, you can go on for long periods of time, certain things. But in general, there's just movement. Yeah. Yes, please.
My question is about different types of contemplation, and just when ideas get in the way of contemplation. So I was just thinking about when it came to Anicca and other ideas that come up in Buddhism, that because of the overthinking mind and that sense of self, just going too far with like some of the ideas and just going back to what are the simple things that the Buddha actually wants us to contemplate.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Just as a question.
Sure. Okay. Good. Yeah. Don't overthink. Yeah, obviously, the idea here, contemplation is more like observing and learning from observation. Yeah. So you see the unreliability of the world. I mean, it's kind of staring in the face. You don't have to think too much about it. Yeah. So it often, one of the kind of beautiful teachings that Ajahn Brahm's teacher told. Ajahn Brahm's teacher is a monk in Thailand called Ajahn Chah. He died over 30 years ago. And one of his teachings was, everything teaches you. Yeah, so when you move around through your daily life, you can see impermanence around you at all times. Yeah, it is everywhere. People dying, things changing, people getting sick, the world moving in various ways. So sometimes all you need to do is have your wits about you and see what is going on. And as you do that, impermanence you start to really feel this thing. Yeah? And you start to feel, actually, why am I relying on this world? Why am I getting upset when I get the bad news? I should really expect these things to happen. This is the nature of the world. There's all these undercurrents building up steam, waiting for those tectonic plates to bang, move. And then the earthquake happens. An earthquake is like an example of this impermanence happening in reality here. So it's more like observing peacefully and allowing the wisdom to sink in. Yeah, that's kind of what it really is about. And then you do that first of all by observing the world, and then you do the same thing in your local kind of your personal sphere, and then ultimately in your meditation practice.
And my final question would be: is how would you know when you feel like you have that wisdom sunk in, where just because you're always constantly observing and learning things, maybe that over-focus of like, I've got to learn about Anicca today, so I'm just going to look for that.
Yeah.
When does that wisdom,
it's a very good question. Thank you for asking that question. It's a really good question, and I think it's something that is often misunderstood in Buddhism. The way you know is by the depth of your meditation. Because if you understand impermanence, you will let go. Yeah, and when you let go, that is precisely what it means, that you're able to become more peaceful in meditation. So you know by the ability to achieve peace in meditation. That's how you know these things actually work. Yeah.
Thank you, Ajahn. I'm thinking, correct me if I'm wrong, craving plays a key role in the whole thing. Reduced craving will improve your letting go, and then your understanding or acceptance of the impermanence improves. Is that right?
Say again, what craving?
Craving.
Yeah.
More craving, more stuck with the impermanence, and then sadness. And then suffering.
Right. Yeah.
So reduce the craving first, which is something within kind of the normal person's control.
You know, but the thing is that if you do observe impermanence, one of the main points of that is that it does reduce craving. Yeah, because you cannot crave for things that are unreliable and uncertain. So it usually goes the other way around. You start with a contemplation. That reduces the craving and the desire. Yeah.
Yes, it helps, of course.
It helps, yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Ajahn.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have this may sound like a trick question, but it's not really intended to be a trick question. And the question is, would you say that the Buddha's teachings themselves are impermanent? Like, how far does this idea of adicca go? And that's something that I've been thinking about for a long, long time.
Yeah. So, yes, of course they are impermanent. Yeah, the teachings are impermanent in the sense that the Buddha teaches, he sets in motion the wheel of the Dhamma, and the momentum of that wheel only goes for so long, and eventually it dies out, and then there is no Dhamma in the world. And this is one of the things that gets you kind of, to do the right thing, because you understand that actually, right now we have it, and it will not last that long. One day it will be gone. That's kind of scary, And imagine the darkness when you don't really have any really good teachings to guide you or whatever. So that is true. But on the other hand, you could say that the principles of nature are not impermanent. So there is one thing is the kind of the phenomena as you observe them through the six senses. Those phenomena are always impermanent, but the principles that lie behind that, the laws of nature, they are not impermanent. So impermanence itself is not impermanent. Impermanence is always there. Dependent origination, the laws of causality are always true. The Four Noble Truths are always also true. So you need to distinguish between the phenomena of the world and the laws behind those phenomena. Okay. So anything else? Over there now. Okay. Please.
Yeah, Ajahn. One of the issues I think I have is when I think that I'm letting go or not clinging on to impermanence. It's replaced by almost a feeling of apathy. And I don't know whether that is a positive.
Probably not so positive. You don't want to be too apathetic. I mean, it's good to relax, right? I mean, that's certainly useful. You need to try to build up some more joy in your meditation, something positive, something that brightens the mind up. And the way to do that is always this is really the foundation of the Buddhist path. The idea of being kind and being generous and these kind of things. To see what you can do with that in your life. How can you? I'm sure you are a very good person already. I'm sure you are doing many of the right things. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. It's kind of bleeding obvious. But still, what more can I do? How can I have more compassion for people in the world? I mean, I think one of the biggest dangers in life is to be judgmental of people around us and the world, and to take sides in the wars and say, these are bad, these are the bad guys, these are the good guys, and that kind of stuff. Everyone is suffering. We're all just beating each other up in stupid ways in this world. Everyone is worthy of compassion in one way or another. And once you see the whole world as worthy of compassion, and many of those people worthy of compassion, they're also worthy of kindness and worthy of friendliness because they actually have good qualities as well. Once you start to see things in this way, then that really abolishes some of those defilements and negative things in your mind that may arise. I don't know anything about your mind, by the way, but I'm just kind of, the general trend of human minds, what they're like. Just working from personal experience here. So do good things, do the right thing, treat people with kindness, be generous whenever you can. Generosity often must mean small little things in daily life, little things. Say a kind word. A kind word is a beautiful way of being generous because it's so easy. And, just tell someone you appreciate them. I never told you before how much I appreciate you, but actually, you've been my friend for so long. I feel so lucky to have a friend like you. Something simple, something really, really nice. And that is like giving a gift without, just through words. There's so much we can do in that area. And then you are building up those qualities that will eventually lead to hopefully a mind that is more bright as you meditate. Please,
Ajahn, it was so good to hear that he went to Sri Lanka and had some good experiences. Would you be able to share with us anything that was either profound or any place that you found that was really
of course.
meaningful?
Very happy to do that. So, first of all, I have to say that I really love going to Sri Lanka. I also love going to India. I find both India and Sri Lanka really nice places. I would guess that I've probably been a monk in Sri Lanka, maybe India as well, before. Probably. And it's kind of a nice idea. Maybe I was a nun in Sri Lanka. I don't know what I was. Hard to know. But I think there was some good reasons for thinking that. And so I feel kind of natural over there. And we were in this beautiful meditation center close to Kandy. One thing I'm always afraid of in Sri Lanka is the heat. That's kind of the one thing that worries me the most. But when you come up into the hills, it kind of gets quite nice. So morning temperature, just beautiful. And then one of the things I did when I was there, I went to visit one of the small forest monasteries in Sri Lanka. I have a very close monk friend in Sri Lanka, Venerable Dhammaloka, who is a beautiful monk, Sri Lankan monk. He's been to Perth as well before, stayed with us for the Rains retreat. Really nice. He translated all my talks while I was there. He had a lot of work to do because I gave so many talks. And went to his monastery, and he has this small little forest monastery on top of this hill. And there's kind of rice paddies and farms kind of around. Most of it is forest, but there's also these rice paddies there. Everything is so incredibly simple, right? Beautiful simplicity, nothing fancy at all. There's this kind of, basic concrete walls and a tin roof and something like that. And you go inside, it's very bare and very simple. And very, very attractive. And then in the morning, I was only there for a few hours. In the morning, you kind of go out with your arms balled, you go down the hill, you go to the local farms, and they kind of give you some pindabat, right? You go on your arms around, you come back, you have your meal. Super simple and super kind of very, very beautiful. And I said to him, well, actually, what if monks from Bodhinyana wants to come and stay over here? Yeah, what do you think about that? He already had some visitors before from us, actually. But he thought that was a really nice idea. And, he doesn't have that many cuties, unfortunately. But that was actually maybe the highlight, is seeing that monastery. Yeah, it was very, very nice. And then, of course, lots of talks and that kind of things. But very, very beautiful trip actually to Sri Lanka. Thank you. Wow.
Ajahn Brahmali.
Yes, please fire away, Eddie. See what happens.
Oh.
Yeah.
Can I say?
Speak.
Ajahn Brahmali.
Yeah.
Thank you for tonight's priceless talk. I repeat again, it's priceless.
Yeah.
You not only cover impermanence, you cover the heart of the Buddha's teaching tonight. Okay, yeah. I'd like to make a just quick comment, okay, and then the question, okay, yeah. In my dealings with Buddhism, the years of dealings with Buddhism, I've been going round and round and round and round and round without finding the thing, okay. And I found it in what you meant, your talk tonight. That's what I found, Not tonight, I found it already. And when you say this thing, it just makes me feel, I see it clearly. Okay, yeah. And then the thing is I refer to the Buddha's teaching, okay? Let's hope that the people with less dust in their eyes who can understand this. We hope we can, with those with dust, we hope eventually there'll be less dust. They can see the teaching which you said tonight, which is priceless. And I urge people I'm going to put this especially in a tape, okay? And refer to it all the time, especially, yeah. Okay. Can I ask you, when you talk about contemplation.
Short question.
Yeah, contemplation.
Yeah.
Do we contemplate, like when you're up, the time is hard to contemplate, So only when you're down, you're looking for answer, then, you urge people to play this tape, you will see a lot of wisdom down there, I think, So we should be contemplating on the talk tonight, Or most of the time, isn't it? But you can't do it when you're up.
Of course you can. You can always do it, and this is the thing, sometimes, as you say, when things are going too well, you get complacent, you become stupid, because the world is going too well, and then only when things are going badly, you start contemplating. But we should learn from those experiences.
We should learn,
then we should contemplate at all times.
We should put it in our mind all the time, okay? Instead of when you're going to shit, you dig the hole, they say, and then, you should dig the hole in advance, this thing,
exactly.
to help us through this thing, I think, Sure.
Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you so very much, Ajahn Brahmali. It's priceless talk.
Okay, excellent. So this is Eddie, the most famous Buddhist in Perth, apart from Ajahn Brahm. Anyway, let's go on. Question number 1 is from Sri Lanka. Dear Ajahn Brahmali, is there a purpose behind Buddhist chanting apart from tradition? I feel if it is done correctly, it can hold great power. Thank you ever so much. Purpose of Buddhist chanting, the original idea of Buddhist chanting is to remember the word of the Buddha. That's why people chanted these teachings. So it really is a way of understanding the Buddha's teachings if it is done in the right way. That is the main purpose. Unfortunately, we often do the chanting in Pali, so that means you have to learn Pali. That's the only downside. So learn a bit of Pali, or we can do the chanting in English or whatever. Chanting apart from that, does it have any power? Probably, because the world is an interesting place, and sometimes you can the mind is a very powerful thing, and sometimes we can touch other people just by our mind. So doing chanting and then developing the mind at the same time can be very powerful and useful. So the answer is yes, but don't do too much chanting. Sometimes you do too much. It becomes counterproductive. You just start yawning and falling asleep and these kind of things. Question number 2. This is from Martha in Germany. Hello, Martha. Hi, Venerable Ajahn Brahmali. What would be a useful thought at the moment of death? Thank you, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Useful thought at the moment of death is chillax. That's the best kind of thought when you're dying. Just relax, take it easy, enjoy the journey. Don't try too hard to think anything in particular. If you try too hard to think, and are guaranteed you're going to mess things up. Dying should be a peaceful, nice process. I always, sometimes you hear in Theravada Buddhist circles the idea that when you die, you should have a good state of mind. You shouldn't think anything bad. But that creates a lot of pressure when you're dying, Don't think any bad, I'm dying, no, I'm thinking bad thought, no, what am I going to do? You can imagine, how terrible this is. It's like saying to someone, don't think about a white elephant. You have no choice, right? Don't think any bad thoughts. Okay, you're going to think those bad thoughts. But I think that whole idea about thinking the right thing when you're dying is actually a misunderstanding of the Dhamma. That's not what it is about, because the death process is not as it is found in the Abhidhamma Pitaka. It is not one moment you are here, next moment you're in the next life. No, there is an intermediate life and all of these kind of things. And so there is time for that process to take shape. So just relax, just enjoy the journey. Dying is usually a very pleasant thing to do. If you are ready, if your mind is peaceful, you are at ease, you have lived well, then dying is great. Why? Because most people who die, they have a miserable body. The body is just really suffering. Many people, they want to go off to these kind of clinics that end your life anyway, Dignitas in Switzerland or whatever they're called. So sometimes dying, if you do it right, is very pleasant and a very nice thing. You just have to make sure you're ready. What matters is what you do now in this life, not what you do at the moment when you die. If you're going to really chillax, when you die, then get someone to come to your hospital bed or whatever and tell you a few jokes. Say, have you heard the one about the Irishman, the Scotsman, and the Englishman? Or the Aussie and the Kiwi? I don't know what kind of, how this is, anyway. And so, this is kind of the thing. And Ajahn Brahma always says that. He goes to hospital and he tells a joke on the hospital bed. No one else does that. Everyone else goes to cry. Ask those people who cry not to come too close to your passing away, Get those nice, friendly people, those people who are upbeat instead. That's the Buddhist ideal of dying, Anyway, question from Bolivia. Hello, Bolivia. Not sure if that's your name, probably not, but anyway. What is sense restraint? If I restrain myself in asking someone about his university grades because I don't want to be jealous about that, is that sense restraint? Maybe. The idea of sense restraint is that you avoid doing things that will give rise to bad mental qualities. So if jealousy obviously is a bad mental quality, so if you do something to avoid jealousy, then it is good, right? I'm not sure if this is the right way to avoid jealousy. I would suggest that, if someone gets better grades, okay, have mudita, have, yay, wow, well done, you did really well, I did much worse, good on you. Yeah, something like that. And it's okay to do worse. It's okay. There's always going to be some people who are smarter than you, people who are more clever. The world is full of, these kind of things. So get used to not being the winner all the time. That's okay. Yeah. And then you're fine. The idea is to avoid the bad qualities of mind from arising, to be aware of what is happening in the present. And then when you see bad qualities, especially anger arising, you take a countermeasure before it's too late. You see, you're getting angry with somebody, you remember their good qualities, and the anger is abolished, like dew before the sun. All right. Next one, also from Germany. So Germany is here today in force. Dear Ajahn, did the Buddha give instructions to lay or monastic practitioners about how many hours per day would be the ideal to do formal practice? How many hours did the Buddha meditate per day? The formal practice, I don't like this idea of formal practice and informal practice. Practice is just, what is Buddhist practice? Well, the main thing is just to be kind and to live well. You should do that at all times. Is that informal or formal? It's just whatever, it just is, you just do it. And then when you meditate, you sit down, you do your best to meditate. Don't make it formal, it sounds too tiring to me if everything's going to be formal. Just meditate. Just enjoy, sit back, relax, watch the breath, do whatever you have, whatever it needs. Do what you enjoy. Yeah, don't do things that don't work. As a minimum, do maybe 15 minutes. In the morning, whatever you can. It depends on how your mind state is like. Depends on how developed you are through previous practices. It depends on all of these kind of things. It depends on how busy you are on that day. Don't have too many strict ideas about what is appropriate. If you do, it's going to be really hard. So don't try. And then when things feel well and you're going really well, then you can extend the meditation a little bit. Don't try to have too fixed ideas about this, but say a minimum of 15 minutes a day, right? Every day or 5 days a week or whatever it is that is convenient for you, as a minimum. If you can do more, great. How many hours you should do, there is no should do. How many hours did the Buddha meditate? We don't know. We have no idea. Probably he took every opportunity he had. So when he didn't give teachings, he would probably just close his eyes and go into some deep bliss very quickly. That's probably what the Buddha would do. Remember the path of meditation should be enjoyable. If it becomes stressful, you are already on the wrong track. So do what is enjoyable. Try to sit down and meditate every day, but if it doesn't work for whatever reason, then stop. And don't carry on pushing yourself through too much pain or through much problems or whatever sort. Okay. Good luck with that and see what happens. So that is all for tonight, everyone. So let's just pay homage to the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha.